Audio Unleashed. You well hydrated?
Yeah.
Well, let's make a podcast, man.
Let's do it. Let's crank the energy up to 11.
It's a little too early in the morning for 11 on my part.
That's what our listeners expect.
Well, let's do like a 9.5, man. Well, our 9.5 is most people's 12, so it evens out. Anyway.
So our 3 is most people's 9?
Oh,
I don't know. Anyway,
what kind of is this logarithmic? I don't know, man.
Why don't you let's stop confusing people with math and start entertaining them with anecdotes about the audio industry.
Okay, let's start off with an AI bust, man.
Okay.
So I saw this on Ars Technica, but the reporting comes from the New York Times. But Ars Technica's headline is FBI busts musicians' elaborate AI-powered $10 million streaming royalty heist. Feds say it's the first U.S. criminal case involving artificially inflated music streaming. This is by Benj Edwards, and it's interesting. I don't know. We'll get into this segment, but it's funny. I think this guy is getting in trouble for things that you wouldn't expect him to get in trouble for, and not getting in trouble for the things you would expect him to get in trouble for.
Yeah,
and I think it would be different if the roles were reversed and this were either the streaming service or a music label. But we'll dig into that. We'll get to the details later. But what do you want to talk about?
I want to talk about, somehow I got on the mailing list of this website called CE Critic. And I've looked at this. I'm like, this has got to be AI, and it won't tell you who's behind it. But I found they were talking about these Hegel amps, Hegel, which is a high-end audio brand. I'm like, why is this AI site talking about Hegel amps? And this got into a larger, internal philosophical dialogue between me and myself about amp reviews. And like, if this AI site is writing about amps, and maybe it's not a whole lot less informative, if at all, than most of what people write about amps, I thought it's time to raise the question, why are we reviewing amps? Well, we'll dig into it.
We will. Yeah. So after that,
next.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the RIAA mid-year report. So these come out regularly. RIAA, for people who don't know, is the Recording Industry Association of America, and they have released their mid-year revenue report on, how revenue was generated in the music industry in different ways, breakdown between, streaming and digital downloads and physical media. I don't know if there's anything truly earth-shattering here, but maybe you found something that is, but I thought it'd be just cool to sort of stop and talk about where we are in terms of the music industry, who's making money and how.
Yeah, because, I think we haven't talked about this we probably haven't talked about this since we were what were we called before? The Soundstage Audiophile podcast. And so it's probably worth revisiting. And it's actually interesting for me as a musical artist who's about to release his second album. Was it my third? Well, it's our second series release. And, trying to figure out what formats make sense these days. And this kind of actually dovetails back into the whole AI thing, which, you'd have a hard time doing an AI-based scam with vinyl.
Yeah.
That'd be a real trick.
That would be a trick. Somebody's going to do it, but I don't know. Maybe not.
And then for our Patreon segment, exclusively for our Patreon subscribers, and thank you for subscribing, we are going to talk about an article in strategy.com titled Vox Jettisons Yamo and Energy Brands as it tries to stop the bleeding. And this kind of ties into our, we've been chronicling the sort of demise of a lot of the traditional audio industry that we grew up with. And we're going to chronicle it yet some more in this. And these are two somewhat beloved brands, beloved to me because I spent a lot of time with the people that used to run them, who are all long gone.
Yeah.
But, it's kind of like a what does it all mean thing. And there's a lot of issues to be discussed when it comes to what kind of brands are going to survive going forward.
Yeah. So let's start off with this elaborate AI-powered $10 million streaming royalty heist. So if you go to the Ars Technica article, I think we're linked to this one because, people can read it without the paywall. But
yeah, there were a bunch. I read several.
Oh, okay. So it starts.
This was a good graphic, so they get the
Oh, it was a very good graphic. So it's like, it's like 18-wheelers pulling out of a warehouse, but it makes the keys of a keyboard. So yeah, very neat. So anyway, it starts off on Wednesday. Federal prosecutors charged a North Carolina musician. That's interesting point. There's a plot twist right at the beginning with defrauding streaming services of $10 million through an elaborate scheme involving AI, as reported by the New York Times. So basically, very short version of this story, dude wanted to sort of use streaming services to make a ton of money using his own music, and quickly realized that he couldn't crank out enough music to do it without getting caught. So they say at some point he collaborated with some other musicians, but eventually just started generating music with AI. And then, but that's not the most interesting part of the story. So people were thinking, oh, that's the AI defrauding. No. What he was doing was using AI to create fake listeners. So racking up all of this, and even in 2017, Guy is proof that being intelligent in one way does not make you intelligent in every way, because apparently he was recording the entire history of his fraud by emailing himself. So in 2017, he calculated that he could stream his songs 661,440 times a day, earning a potential $3,307 a day, up to $1.2 million annually. And by June of 2019, he was earning $110,000 a month.
Not bad.
That's super crazy. But yeah, the way AI was used here was not it was used to create the music, but that's not the way it created the fraud. He was creating fake listeners with AI.
Just so I understand this, I remember there was an episode of Silicon Valley where they needed to get some traffic to their website really fast. And so I think Jared hired some dude in Bangladesh who worked in some big sort of office, and they just sat there with Huli phones and opened up accounts, right? Yeah. And they were just like these rows and rows and rows of people just doing nothing but opening up accounts. Is this that?
I don't know. I basically, from what I understand, that he developed software to make it look like it was individuals coming from different locations, but it wasn't. He may have been using an onion router or something like that, or a VPN. But yeah, the thing is, he was controlling all of these listeners, but I think virtually they were in locations around the world. If I'm understanding this correctly, it may be possible that I'm not. But
he just had a bunch of fake email accounts, and he wrote software that would grab an email account, send out an email on that account.
Kind of, yeah.
And or launch a free membership on Spotify or whatever in that name, and then stream tunes using that particular account automatically. That seems pretty doable. And I gotta say, Dennis, how much more crooked is this than the normal stuff Spotify does in the course of a day?
It's not. The thing is, though, this guy is not he's not Scandinavian mafia, so he doesn't have ties directly to Spotify, allegedly, and he's not a record label. So I think the mistake that he made was not being part of the establishment. But I think it's a very, very good point. It's no more shady than anything the labels and the streaming services themselves are doing, but he's not one of them. So he got busted hard. They were like, no, we can't let normal people use these tools to make billions. No, we use these tools to make billions. I mean, that's my take on it anyway. What's your take?
Well, yeah, So I guess no actual person was listening to this music, right?
doesn't. Well, I mean, it turns out I've seen some threads on Reddit where people have come across the bands because of the names or the names of the songs. Like he was creating artists with names like Callous Post and Calorie Screams, and songs like Zygotic Washstands and Zymo Technical. And I think some people had come across the music just because of the names and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, it was not real people listening to this. So yeah, it was just machines sitting there streaming through the stuff.
Well, this is a meta statement about a lot of things, though. I mean, just the fact that you can come up with so many generic names and it sort of passes muster for 7 years?
Yeah.
And it kind of reminds me of like death metal. It's a genre of which I am, something of a fan. And, if you get into the greatest band ever, which is, of course, Celtic Frost, you have song titles like, Jewel Throne, Dawn of Megiddo, Eternal Summer. Well, that's like a Beach Boys thing, but Circle of the Tyrants, Tears in a Prophet's Dream, Necromantical Screams. Okay. I mean, how hard would it be to make a death metal AI? And all the vocals are just, and the music is just, right?
Sounds like Cookie Monster having a bad day. Yeah.
I'm going to edit all this out and just make my own death metal AI and finally make some money in my life.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it's a good point. Another point that occurred to me is how disconnected the economy is from things of actual value. So this guy is making fake music. He has fake listeners. At no point is there actual anything of value being exchanged, except he has racked up just a crap ton of money. Right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I don't know, the economy. Right? It's this fiction that is completely divorced from real value. So it's sort of a microcosm of that as well.
Well, it's Wall Street.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that. I mean, it's a big chunk of Wall Street. It's just this sort of pointless trading back and forth to scrape up a few pennies here and there, as opposed to, actual real people investing in things of real value, which I do. It's fine. I'm making a little money off that. But, so much of it is just this sort of digital churn.
Yeah.
Well, it's also kind of like Bitcoin mining.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just this digital churn that makes people a couple pennies here and there. And if you get enough servers and stuff going at it, then you can make millions of pennies, which starts to get into real money pretty soon, because millions of pennies is tens of thousands of dollars. And then, billions of pennies is tens of millions of dollars. Yeah. Doing a lot of math today. I'm surprised I'm coming up with all these this fast.
We're going to change our name to Math Unleashed.
We might actually do better.
That's a good point. Oh, anyway, buddy, anything else of worth to say about this one? I mean, I think
no. I mean, it's obviously, I don't know. I'm kind of, it's like, this is wrong and it's sort of fraud, but I guess the fraud's on Spotify. It's not on listeners, except for the few people that listen to that. But God knows this stuff's probably no worse than the Spotify generated garbage that's on there. But we're going to be talking about garbage later on in the show, I think, aren't we?
Not the band Garbage, but
no. Oh no, we were going to talk a little bit about that Ted Gioia article.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
And which just came out in his newsletter. Ted Gioia, a prognosticator and pundit about media things and stuff. And I just got his newsletter, and it's 11 predictions. Here's what AI does next, and it was great. I mean, a lot of it we already knew, but we probably knew to some extent. We already knew all of it, but the one that really hit me was number 5. The bots will actually get dumber despite trillions of dollars in investment. This huge spending actually accelerates the degradation. And we've talked about this where AI is starting to learn off of AI generated stuff because it's running out of human generated stuff to go off of.
Yeah. And I mean, most of the new images going in the web these days are AI generated. So creates a feedback loop. Yeah.
In other words, AI will soon hit a brick wall, I'm quoting from him, and face a dumbness crisis of epic proportions. This will happen around the same time that AI will have pervaded, whatever. You pick your word.
Recession, it's all the same, man.
Every sphere of society. Although I know something that Ted Gioia doesn't know here.
Yeah? What do you know?
Well, my new album's coming out pretty soon, and that'll give AI so much awesome stuff to learn from that it'll temporarily raise the quality of music, AI generated music across the web.
That's a good point.
At least for a while, at least for 6 or 8 months,
Yeah, yeah.
So
I thought the best point that Ted made was the first point, though. Stop worrying about AI taking over. It's the people who own the AI who pose the biggest threat. You know? I mean, look, and one of the things that he doesn't talk about in that point specifically is just the monumental amounts of money that you have to dump in this stuff to develop it. And also just the massive amount of processing power that it takes in terms of computer cycles. And look, what these people want to do is not free us from the oppression of labor. What they want to do is free themselves from the tax of labor. They want to have fewer employees. And so you think about it that way and you'll realize the ways in which they're going to use AI that are to the benefit of no one but them. So
they're in this to make money and to amass power. And they are not benevolent actors here. They're not necessarily malign actors, but they are amoral actors, I think, for the most part. And the nice thing is, they can't yet probably take guitars away from us and things like that, and saxophones and stuff. So people can still play music. Yeah. But I just really kind of fear that the streaming services will be just awash in garbage and you won't be able to find things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest mistake that this Michael Smith guy made in his plot to make $10 million with this scam is that he wasn't already a billionaire. If he were already a billionaire, nobody would have batted an eye.
True. So. And he could have afforded to buy enough lawyers to throw at it and come up the works for years.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, speaking of, I don't have a segue. I have no segue.
I was waiting with bated breath. How are you going to do this, Brent? Are you going to do it? Oh, wow.
I don't have a segue, but next we're going to talk about something entirely different. We're going to get back to talking about gear.
Let's go take a break, get some water. We'll be right back.
Cool. We're back. This is Audio
Unleashed.
And we are going to go on a journey here. A jazz improv odyssey, which is pretty much what we always do anyway. But this is triggered by, I get somehow some person, place, or thing added me to this mailing list for the CE Critic website. And it's a piece of crap. I think it's some older person because CE stands for Consumer Electronics, which is a term from, 25, 30 years ago. Back when, now it's the Consumer Technology Association that puts on CES, which was the Consumer Electronics Show, right? But they quit calling it that because they think that that's an outdated term, which in fact it is. But, we used to call ourselves the CE Press, right?
Yeah.
All the people in New York that worked at all these, the enthusiast magazines that were, mainstream, not your Stereophiles and Absolute Sounds, and the trade magazines and all that kind of thing, like Twice and others I have forgotten. But so I think it's an old person doing it, and it's you read it, you fed it through GPT-0, right?
Yeah, I did.
And what'd you get?
91% likelihood that this is written by ChatGPT. So.
Yeah. But I found on there, so I'm, just out of morbid curiosity, I'm like, oh, let's see what kind of crap they're doing now. And they actually had a thing about a Hagel amp, that Hagel had updated their control app. I'm kind of like, it's been a sort of time-honored tradition in what was called the CE Press is now called the Tech Press, to just basically print people's press releases. And which, that's kind of what the companies hope for. I mean, you send them a press release, it's written like a story, and they just grab it and post it, right? I mean, obviously, your legitimate institutions are not going to do that, but I mean, even like Audio Express does it, but they have a lot of commentary about it, right? And so the commentary is what you want. You kind of ignore the release. Yeah. But anyway, this is just posting the release. I'm kind of like, wait a minute. Whoa. Slow down. Hagel is a high-end brand. I mean, these amps are thousands of dollars, right? For integrated amplifiers. And they upgraded their firmware. And it has a conclusion. The new Hagel control app and firmware update elevate the H600 and H400 to new heights, offering enhanced control, expanded streaming capabilities, blah, 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 right? And I'm looking at this going like, how is this any less useful than most amp reviews?
That's a good point.
And since I kind of really don't review amps, I review under $300 amps for a wire cutter. And I just measure them, and because below that price point, some of the stuff is fairly dysfunctional, right? I mean, you could have some major frequency response issues. They could have a filter in there that they might not even realize is there, or may have been added for some kind of really unwise reason. I mean, I've seen like 6 dB bumps in the bass with some of these things. But, you review, real amps that are, a couple $1,000 or whatever, right? And
I generally review integrated amps. I don't do a lot of pure power amp reviews.
Well, that's what these are. But, integrated amps, power amps, preamps are all kind of the same in a lot of ways. I mean, they're supposed to be something that just passes signal and makes it bigger. Or, in the case of the preamp, it controls the volume of the signal and it selects sources, and it might have tone controls. But fundamentally, high-end amps and preamps and all that, and integrated amps all do the same. They have the same exact task. And I was thinking like, well, okay, you can run measurements on them, but the measurements don't tell you. I mean, all the woo-woo guys, right, will tell you, well, the measurements don't tell you how it sounds. I'm kind of like, well, they're right. The measurements don't tell you how they think it will sound.
Yeah.
But then, all the people that review these things, and I'm going to say all, at least until Aaron Hardison gets his ABX box going, maybe. All the people that review these things basically, plug it in, listen to it, and then start, as you put it a long time ago, start making up a bunch of nonsense about inner detail, right? Yeah. Because, it's completely uncontrolled testing. It's not even, they probably don't even match their volumes. I mean, a few of them, Stephen Stone, hi, Stephen, did a big article about matching levels with DACs and basically pointing out like, hey, I'm going to all this work to do this.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure not too many other people are, because it's hard. And, it's like some dude sits there and plugs an amp into a system and blah, blah, microdynamics. Is it microdynamics?
Microdynamics,
And, blah, blah, and something. And yet the measurements, it's like, okay, well, any decent amp is going to be reviewed in Stereophile or something. If it's solid state, it's going to have flat response. It's going to have low distortion. It's going to have, basically no performance problems. If it's tube, it's going to have a high output impedance, so it's going to make your speaker swing like crazy. But maybe you like that, and maybe you don't. But it's going to vary from the speaker, and it's going to vary according to taste. So the fact that, I'm not picking on Ken McAuliffe, but that's a name that came to me, which is, I guess, a good thing. Ken McAuliffe at Stereophile thinks that some amp sounds great, some tube amp sounds great with a certain set of speakers. Well, that's his personal taste, number one. Number two, you're not going to have the same result with your speakers. So I'm sitting here, Dennis, you're an amp reviewer. What's the point of reviewing amps?
I mean, for me, look, if we're just going to talk about the amp stage, it really boils down to, is the output impedance low enough? Can the power supply give you enough current, right?
All of which can be easily measured.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I always try to give some experience. If I'm working with an amp that is not just way overpowered, which I got to admit, most of the ones that I review have way too much power, right? When you get into the ones that have just enough power, I want to connect different kind of loads to it that people can relate to and go, can I hear the impedance swings, right? And I know what it's going to sound like if an amp doesn't provide enough current for my paradigm towers, right? I'm going to lose some energy right around like the baseline of Allman Brothers Band's Blue Sky, and I can hear that. So it kind of was like, okay, what is this going to sound like with different kind of speakers, and what is that related to? Again, it's probably the power supply. It's probably the output impedance. But
but that's all measurable, and output impedance of a solid state amp is going to be below 1/10 of an ohm.
But the thing is, I have found that a lot of my readers don't even read the measurements. They just want to know that they're there as a check, right?
Yeah.
And also sometimes I want to, I haven't seen the measurements before I write my write-up, but I can kind of tell if there are going to be big problems. If I know this thing is going to go to Diego Estan, our measurement specialist, and I know he's going to find a specific problem, I want to get out ahead of that and go, I think probably what's going on here is this, and that sounds like this, right? Beyond that, is the volume control competent? Because to me, in my experience, maybe I'm wrong here, but just in my experience, the biggest difference between most of the integrated amps that I review is the volume control. And then that's not just an ergonomic thing, it's also an operational thing. Like Marantz is doing some really, really neat stuff with volume controls these days, where depending, it's not just purely volume control. They're also controlling gain. And that's interesting. And that can lead to an effect whereby at very low listening levels, you end up with more dynamics, preserves the dynamics better at very, very low listening levels, things like that. And other than that, it's just, it's vibes, man. Is this thing cool to use? What features does it have? Is it doing anything stupid? I mean, that's the biggest question I ask. Is this thing doing anything stupid?
Well, that's a reasonable thing to do. And vibes is certainly, because look, I'm not necessarily going to buy the cheapest amp there is, right? Or the cheapest anything, So I think vibes has something to do with it, though. But there's two problems here. Number one, in terms of how the volume control works and stuff, right? Well, we don't have any double-blind listening tests that show that people can identify that stuff. I mean, we're still sitting here, and there's just really, you can go through the AES archives, and there's really kind of nothing out there for, people being able to tell amps apart in blind listening tests, or preamps for that matter.
Correct.
And in terms of how the volume control works and circuit subtleties and things like that. It's, Jeff Fritz, formerly Soundstage, did a nice column, I guess about 5 years ago, how he bought like some really old Krell amp, one of their first amps, and compared it to new amps. And it was like, it's basically just as good. I mean, other than, energy savings with Class D, there's been no improvements in amp design that are audible. I mean, we had response, flat response from 20 to 20, many, many decades ago. And we had low distortion many decades ago and enough current to drive, 4-ohm speakers to high levels many years ago. And we've had most of this stuff since kind of, maybe not the dawn of solid state, but certainly after solid state had been around for 10 years or something. So let's say, 1970 or something, right? Whatever that was. Yeah. And you still find these big, long reviews of, the D'Agostino. It's just like what I thought of this a lot, though, when I was reading the review of the D'Agostino, what is it? Is it their preamp? I can't remember. It's this crazy thing where it's a dual mono preamp with a separate power supply. So it's 3 chassis that are all stacked up, right? Ooh. And It's like $150,000. And some guy got on the comments section and said, "This is better." And he linked to this topping amp that Stereophile had also reviewed that was, I don't know, probably $200, $250.
Yeah.
And it actually measured better than the D'Agostino. Yeah. And we have no listening tests, no real listening test, not some guy sitting there in his underwear swapping amps out, right?
Yeah.
All we have is super casual listening tests that are very influenced by bias. We don't have any controlled scientific listening tests that show that topping amp for $200 is any better or worse than the D'Agostino for $150,000.
My biggest problem with a lot of amp reviews, and one of the things that I try really, really hard to counter, is just the guru mentality.
Yeah.
I guess I would break it down by saying, like, the notion that they have sort of permeated out into the world is that every amp speaker combination is so utterly unique and special that unless you have connected this speaker to this amp, you have no way of knowing how it sounds.
Right.
And one of the things that I try to fight hard against and try to inform people of and keep them mindful of, I just wrote an article about this that I think is going live soon, is just like, does the person doing the review demonstrate an understanding of how this product category works? I've read so many reviews where people are talking about an amp and they're like, oh, the bass is muscular. And never at any point in time do they tell me anything about impedance or power supplies, right? And it's like, they're basically acting as if the muscularity of that bass, whatever that means to them, is an inherent property of the amp. And so for me, one of the things that I try to do with reviews of products that include an amplification stage is just to say, this is basic physics, right? In terms of the interaction. So if you've got a speaker similar to mine, three-way tower, perhaps, I mean, there are differences in the impedance curves of speakers, even though very, very similar designs, but they're not so radically different. Look, there's going to probably, with any ported three-way tower speaker, going to be an impedance dip somewhere between, let's just say, 50 and 250 hertz, right? I think that would be fair to say, right?
Yeah, sure.
And so if you've got an amp that is reacting to that, then yes, one speaker is going to sound different from another. But if it's a well-behaved amp, probably not.
Exactly. With a well-behaved amp, probably not. And that includes basically any non-crappy solid state amp, right?
Yeah.
And by crappy, I mean under $100 Class D thing you get off Amazon. Some of those are fairly dysfunctional, right? But the ones, once you start to get up to $100, and I've measured these things, they kind of work fine.
But then again, once you get above like $3,000, again, it kind of maybe not. There's this sweet spot. There's this range where you
not
can
with solid state though.
Well,
not with solid state.
That's true.
With tube amps, I mean, you can look in Stereophile, and John Atkinson, the technical editor, smartly measures with a simulated speaker load to show you how much this thing changes your sound.
Yeah.
And, with a solid state amp, it's negligible. It's little tiny, teeny bumps, right? Because, look, the speaker load is going to be somewhere between, probably 3.5 and 16 ohms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Generally speaking, an impedance difference of 10 times is considered to be significant, right? So, if you had a 1 ohm output impedance on these amplifiers, right? Well, that would be significant with speaker impedance, right? Because it's a ratio of, even a standard 8 ohm speaker, there's still a ratio of 1:8. So it's like, okay, that would create some swings. And in fact, Bob Carver, the old Sunfire amps that he designed, had a quote unquote, I can't remember what he called it, but it was basically a tube mode, right? And it basically switched to 1 ohm resistor in series with the output. That's all it did.
Wow.
And so it changed the sound of your speakers, whether you liked it or not. He told me, he's like, well, people might like it. They might not. Doesn't matter. It gives them an option. And, and the output impedance of a tube amp might be somewhere in that range. So It's kind of like, and once you start to get into these tube amps that Stereophile reviews and measures, any review is going to be a matter of opinion that's based on, first of all, your own opinion of whether you like the sound, which someone else probably won't share. And, the listening notes on the final mixes of my album are as good evidence of that as I've ever seen.
Really?
Because they're all over the map.
Oh boy. How much of an outlier was I?
I'm actually going to total them all up pretty soon.
Yeah.
But I did a big listening session. I have a friend named Dave Swerdlove down in LA who did an in-depth session of listening. I'm going to actually compare all the notes, but like David's favorite tune was my least favorite tune.
Wow.
Stuff like that. He's like, don't change a thing on this mix. I'm like, that's the one where I wanted to change everything. But anyway, so listener opinions don't count for, the opinion of any one listener counts for just nothing. Yeah. I don't care what magazine you work for. I don't care, how old you are or how exalted you are or how many high-end guys you hang out with and have pictures of yourself with at trade shows or anything like that. Your opinion means nothing.
Yeah, well, that's just your opinion, man. So.
But it really doesn't. And so with the tube amps, you're starting to get into such giant swings that are going to change with your speakers, and of course, change with your listening environment and things like that too. And it just doesn't mean anything. And I guess, like our old friend Steve Guttenberg always says, people aren't reading these reviews for information. They're reading them for fun. So,
yeah.
But, it's kind of fun to read a Jason Victor Serenus amp review in Stereophile. He probably will turn you on to an excellent classical recording you weren't aware of. And, whatever.
Yeah.
It's when these guys start getting into like the Scandinavian piano players that have these like super atmospheric albums that are just kind of like anybody can crank that crap out. And that's when they start to lose me, and they all seem to fall for that. So, oh God, we're probably some of our listeners are like, I like those albums.
I love Hania Rani, man. Come on,
know who that is.
A piano player, very sort of atmospheric, and she does a lot of prepared piano stuff. I like her. Oh, well, I don't care what you think.
It's like, that was like that's the whole ECM records sort of aesthetic.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's nice, it's pleasant, but it's background music, I think.
By the way, the CE Critic thing, I noticed at the top, they've got this, what is CE Critic score?
Yeah.
Dude, I think I figured it out. These guys kind of want to be Rotten Tomatoes, but for consumer electronics. I mean, it's just they're aggregating scores from a bunch of different websites. And I did an ICANN lookup, and this domain was created in December of 2022. So, yeah, this is a really new site. I mean, this is the kind of crap we're going to get as AI takes over journalism. I mean, it is just, it's, they're going to catch some people though. They're people, they're probably brilliant at gaming the Google algorithms. They're probably getting a ton of traffic, and they're probably making way more money than you and I will ever make. So
maybe, I don't know. But you read this stuff. It's like even the who we are or whatever, like the become a CE Critic text is obviously AI generated. Here's this thing. The product review must be used by the critic and provide their unique experience and not just the product specification technology. Okay, well, 100% guaranteed. That's an AI generated sentence.
Yeah. And that's kind of an insult to AI generated sentences because most of them are at least comprehensible.
Right. I'm surprised it's that bad. I mean, it's like the product review must be used by the critic. Well, they mean the product must be used by the critic, right? And that would not be a translation error. That's like an AI hallucination.
It is.
And not just the product specification technology. Well, the product specification technology would be like an audio precision analyzer, right?
Yeah.
It's just like this sentence could be fixed, but the AI is really, I got to say, maybe this AI is really kind of just hallucinating because it's overwhelmed by eating other AI stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, it's a dark future ahead, but
yes, indeed. Maybe this is going to be what breaks the internet, man.
Let me elevate the mood here with a great segue. Let's see. But now we're going to talk about stuff that cannot possibly be generated by AI, at least in any way that we've figured out yet.
That's pretty good. I like it. Yeah.
Okay. And we'll be back soon.
All right. Back to Audio
Unleashed.
That was a pretty good one, man.
It was more like a tractor pull announcer instead of the drunk guy at a Molly Hatchet concert.
Oh, love it. So anyway, this time around, we are talking about the RIAA mid-year 2024 recorded music revenue report, which, I mean, that sounds like probably the most boring thing in the world, but it's kind of not, you know. I mean, it lets you know. RIAA, as I said in the intro, is the Recording Industry Association of America. I think a lot of people probably know the term not only from these mid-year reports, but the RIAA curve for LPs. So, but anyway, they've got their mid-year report on how the music industry is doing in terms of revenue, and the news is not bad unless you make ringtones. You're probably not in good shape if you make your living off of making ringtones. What's so funny is I just can't imagine we ever spent money on ringtones, because if my phone made a noise these days, I would take it out in the backyard and shoot it.
Oh, it's funny.
So yeah, I don't even have it. Like, what? Ringtones? Really? Anyway, those are way down, but a lot of other stuff is way up.
I used to make my own.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Hell yeah. And and I like compress them a lot so they would play really loud. And I mean, I haven't for years, but yeah, I used to have this Ornette Coleman thing on there. And then I had Steve Reich, 4 organs on there. Really annoying stuff.
Nice.
But anyway, sorry. Where were you going with this?
Well, where I was going is I kind of make my own ringtones now, but since I have never have the sound turned on my phone, there are, let's see, 5 people whom I've created custom vibration tones, and I just do their names in Morse code. And so, like, if you or my wife or Lauren or my daughter or Jeff texts me, then your name is Morse coded out in vibrations. And other than that, it's just like, I can probably ignore that. So I guess I kind of do make my own custom ringtones. So you know
Morse code?
No, I don't. It's just I kind of, at this point, recognize, the vibrations that mean, oh, that's Brent. So, yeah. Yeah. Anyway,
wow,
that was a big digression. Ringtones are stupid. But anyway, there's a lot of stuff here that's not stupid, and including the fact that I'm amazed there is still room for growth in terms of streaming, but streaming has managed to grow again up to $99 million in the first half of 2024.
No, it's $5.226.3 billion, right?
Oh, yep.
That's for paid subscriptions. So actually the total streaming revenues are $7.299 billion. Right? So that's in millions. That's a lot. It just keeps on growing. I mean, obviously it's nearing its ceiling, probably.
Oh, that's the mid-year average. That's what it was. That's where that 99 million is coming from.
Yeah. So I guess it's but there's probably millions of billions of people around the world that still don't have streaming, right? Are there? I don't know.
It's weird to me to think that there's still room for growth, but maybe some of this is just prices going up. I don't know.
It could be. I mean, that would be an interesting article to do, is to go to some, relatively impoverished countries. So, even relatively impoverished, probably, populations have cell phones. And I wonder what they stream. I wonder, that would be a great article. That'd be a great article for Neil Stevenson. I mean, he could go travel those countries and see how people are, how it's affecting culture in really far-flung, in I don't know, Namibia or somewhere like that, right?
Yeah.
Or really, one of the countries is if you started naming countries, they'd be about the 200th one you'd name. Nothing against Namibia. I'm sure it's lovely. I've never been there. I've never seen it except for in Fury. What was it? Fury Road, Mad Max, something.
Oh yeah. That was Namibia.
Yeah, apparently.
Interesting.
Because you need huge expanses of desert to do that.
Yeah.
I think it was. Anyway, so but of course, as an artist, I am an artist, man.
Yeah, you are.
I remember David Chesky. An artist, flat out artist. I remember he listened to my first album. And he said, "Man, it sounds really good." And I said, "Well, thanks, but I hate it." He says, "Congratulations, you're an artist."
Nice. Oh, yeah. Physical media, there's an interesting little asterisk here that I thought was fascinating. So physical media is what is up 9.1%?
Which would be CDs and vinyl, right?
Well, that's the point I was about to make. So CDs are up 3.3%. LPs and EPs are up 10.7%.
Yeah.
Other physical media up 175.4%. And I looked at the little, what that means. And that includes SACD, DVD audio, also vinyl singles and cassettes. And I'd love to see a breakdown of which is which, but I am seeing more and more and talking to more and more people who are actually buying cassettes. And we talked about that a few episodes ago. I'm wondering how much of that 175% is cassettes. That's a lot.
Wow. I bet a lot. I bet almost all of it.
Yeah. And I read an interesting thing the other day. It may have been somewhere in this report or the ancillary backup material or whatever, but basically with CD, there's a little bit of growth, but it's just interest, right? In terms of what's the cap on that growth? But with LPs, there is a limit to how much it can grow simply because of replication, pressing facilities. I mean, basically at this point, new facilities are coming online all the time, and they just cannot keep up with the increased demand for vinyl. So we're not going to see that number go up drastically until we can get production up drastically. But apparently the interest is there. So I thought that was fascinating.
Well, but what does it cost though to make cassettes now?
Well, there was that video that we linked to a couple of weeks. I mean, it could be as little as 25 cents or something like that, or it could be a couple of bucks. And it just depends on how you want to do it and how much you want to put into the packaging. But apparently, it's pretty cheap. But you were saying with CDs, it's like a penny or something.
No, it's not a penny, but it's very even at low lifes like me, who print a few hundred at a clip. I think we probably did 2 runs of 250 or something like that, or 500. I can't remember. I mean, we still got some, but a lot of them, a lot of that went for promo. Some were sold. I would guess we sold 100, but a lot went for promo. And I want to say, it ended up being, around $1 a pop, probably.
Oh, okay.
Something like that.
That's
probably
very different from
maybe
a
little less, but it's very cheap. And I'm actually looking at cassette prices right now, which who knows, I might do that. They're not cheap. They're not super expensive either. They're under 30-minute sides, which would be applicable to us, which means 60 minutes total, would be $3.90 each per cassette. Clear plastic cases, 10 or 80 cents each. 3-panel J cards, which is a card that goes into it, at 95 cents each. So that's getting into about $6 per cassette.
Okay.
Which is a lot better than, vinyl in small quantities, I think is probably $15, $20 a record. So I don't know. And of course, cassettes you could do yourself. You could find a good quality Pro Deck somewhere and buy it for probably a few $100s and maybe get it, work on it yourself if you can, probably get it, maybe get it restored.
Yeah, I think Mary Spender, that video that I was mentioning before, that's what, on the low end of her estimate, she was basically saying, you can do it yourself for, I don't know, whatever, small amount, however much basically the physical media costs you to buy the blank media. So,
$2 a pop.
Yeah.
And you can make, you can of course print your own cards up with no problem. And, if you can, and the case is included when you buy the cassette, there's also these horrible, simple cardboard things that you slide the cassette into, which when I was doing the Wirecutter article on cassettes recently, I bought I think it was Ed Sheeran had that. And it's just like a little cardboard sleeve that the cassette slips into and there's no plastic case. So
like we used to get cassette singles in.
Oh, I was not the cassette single generation.
Okay.
I really haven't bought a single. I probably haven't bought a single since about 1974 or 5. Yeah. We only ever bought about probably, me and my brother both bought them for, way back before we kind of figured out where to get albums, and because Kmart had singles. And and you know what the first single I ever bought was?
Ooh, maybe something by the Monkees?
Wrong. You will be delighted to know that it's Ramblin' Man by Allman Brothers.
Nice. Not one of my favorite Allman Brothers tunes, but it's still a good one.
And it developed a skip on the guitar solo where it goes right?
Yeah.
But it developed a skip on the part, and it just would go so it's hard to detect because that repeats like 10 times or whatever, 12, 16 times. And so it took a while for you to figure out it was skipping.
Yeah. I think I'd mentioned a few episodes back that when I got a record player, my dad invited me up to go through my mom's old collection, and I found out, a lot of my old collection is too. And I've snagged some old records of mine from when I was a youth, but also a bunch of 45s. And I thought, I'm going to play these or whatever. And I got through the second one, and I'm just like, this is the stupidest thing. This is calisthenics with a music break. This is not music with a calisthenics break. It's like, come on, man, at least give me 22 minutes of music before I have to get up off my lazy butt. Yeah, I don't get it either. So.
But it's interesting though that vinyl just keeps on climbing, and we still have, I don't know if the stats been updated, but I did an article about 2 years ago, and it was saying that, most people don't ever, only half the people that buy vinyl records actually play them. But, I know I always use my brother and my sister-in-law as normal people, as my gauge of what normal people do. And, they still go buy records, not a whole ton, but they buy them and they listen to them. But they listen to them on an old Sumiko turntable I gave them that was from 1992, I think. Still works fine. And I hooked up a Bluetooth transmitter for them. And so it transmits across the room to a cheap set of Samsung, $100 Samsung Bluetooth speakers.
Nice.
So it's a state-of-the-art vinyl rig. So they're clearly not into it for the magical sound quality of vinyl.
The coolest thing about having vinyl playback now for me is that it's sort of like a voluntary but quasi-necessary membership fee to just the coolest club I've ever been in, which is my local record store, Village Green Records here in Montgomery, Alabama. And just the little magical moments that have happened that would not have happened otherwise. And I don't know, I guess maybe 2 years ago or something like that, somebody, and I wish I could remember who, but at this point I've completely forgotten who it was, sent me a link to maybe either a Spotify link or a YouTube link of this really cool band that they thought I would like. And I did. I really, really liked it a lot. I think I was in the hospital at the time, and maybe a week or so later I went, oh God, like what was that band? I want to go check out like all of their stuff. And I couldn't remember who it was. And I apparently was not signed into YouTube at the time, so it wasn't in my history or whatever. And I just kind of forgot about it because I had no way of finding what was this band like, and I just lost them. Well, last weekend, Travis, the owner of the record store Village Green here in town, was posting some new vinyl that he'd gotten in, and I saw the cover and I'm like, oh, that's the band that I've been looking for, that band, and I couldn't find it. I was like, will you hold these for me? And he was like, sure, man. I didn't think anybody would be interested. I just thought it'd be cool to have them in the shop. Went and picked them up, and it's like now I'm going back, they've only got 4 albums total, and one of them sadly passed away, but I've been listening to their entire output on Apple Music. But it was just like, if I had not had a record player and not been tapped up into that community, I don't think I ever would have found that band again. So
yeah, well, it's I think you don't really have that with streaming. You could, but you don't. And streaming is all playlist oriented, and a lot of people only ever play playlists, and you probably don't have any connection with the people that make the playlists, and it's fine, I guess, but not to knock streaming. Streaming's great, and I still discover things on streaming, and Qobuz throws stuff at me that I find worthy of listening to, and but I don't know. It's not as I think people just like the physical media because it feels special, in a way that something, the streaming just feels generic and it's not special. And you can play it all the time, and you don't put on a record to play it in the background, probably because, as you pointed out, you're going to get up 20 minutes later and flip it. So, that's probably good, but at least, honestly, it's sort of like the market for music is in ways, and this sort of continuing life and in fact growth of physical media is in ways the market responding to the crappy side of streaming, right?
Yeah.
And people trying to make music special as opposed to the people that run the streaming services that are trying to make it unspecial.
Yes. Deliberately trying to make it unspecial. Yeah.
Yeah. They're trying to make it, it's, Cool Ranch Doritos. And people are kind of rebelling against that. I don't know that they are consciously rebelling against it, but they're spending their dollars in a way that indicates that they are. So.
Damn the man, save the empire.
Yeah. We will be the last, the audio world and music worlds will be the last bastion of humanity. When everything else has been taken over by AI, and you can still go see live performances, and those can be done by AI, and they can be done by some dude who punches a button on a MacBook Pro or something. But, most people still like to go see people playing real instruments, and you can't do that with AI.
I mean, it doesn't even have to be real instruments. This band that I keep desperately trying to get you to like, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, they're on tour right now, and they've started working some of their electronica stuff into their live show from the album before last, The Silver Chord. But what's fascinating to me to watch them, they're live streaming this whole tour because they ended up selling out venues that they didn't think they had any business selling out. So they're like, more people want to see us than we thought wanted to see us. So every night you can just go to their YouTube channel and watch their live show that night.
Wow, that's great.
But it's fascinating to me to watch their electronica stuff because they're actually sequencing and programming it in real time. And you'll see them like they've each got their little sequencer at the table, and you'll see them like, hey, can I do this on yours? And they're like, there's this sort of unspoken communication where they're reaching over and sort of making instant improvise changes to other people's sequencing tables. And then Joey will get bored and go start playing guitar in the middle of it. And so you can do real improvised music without real instruments. And I think it's the human element and the decisions in the moment that make it fascinating.
Guys, perhaps I'll actually go watch one of those this week if I find some time. I don't find a lot of time these days. I still haven't watched the Tony Levin interview on Rick Beato.
Whoa, I didn't even see that was up, man.
Yeah, it's like an hour and a half, and it's been up for at least a week, and I haven't watched it. And I normally would have stopped everything in my life to do that, but I'm just too busy. So
heck yeah. All right. Well, speaking of which, you've got a meeting. You got a meeting to get to, so we better wrap this up.
Yeah, and then I have Supple First to Measure. So,
oh boy, yeah.
Let's get moving here.
Let's do it. So this is a Butterburger production. I snuck it on you. I did it this week. Yeah.
And we're going to have music that is... I'm editing, so
yeah,
it's going to be, I am not going to have time to do any more music. I'm going to have to dredge up some old stuff from the vault. So probably one Bugger Burger. Oh my God. Oh my God. Now people are going to start using that. All right. Maybe I'll edit that out. Yeah. So one Butterburger house band production and one Brent Butterworth production, I suppose.
Somebody left a comment on our YouTube channel actually asking how he could stream our interstitial music. So we might need to talk about that, like set up another folder in the YouTube channel and put some of our music up there because apparently one person wants to hear it.
We just need to write an AI that basically takes into which we can feed all of our snippets because we write in 90-second snippets basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how it can turn all those into a full album. In a couple of nanoseconds. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
And we could do it like a different variant of it. We can do 10 or 15 variants of it and change the name slightly. And then we're starting to talk about some real money then.
Yeah. No, we don't already have $1 billion, so they're not going to let us make $1 million, man. Not that way. All right, buddy. Well, as always, it was wonderful talking to you. And listeners, thanks so much. We appreciate each and every one of you. But patrons, stick around. We got one more for you.
All right. Take it easy, y'all.
Bye. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end. If you liked what you heard and wish there'd been a little bit more of it, we got some good news for you.
Indeed, we do. If you check out patreon.com/Audio Unleashed, all one word, you can get new episodes a little earlier than everybody else.
And sometimes it's like a day or two early. Sometimes it's nearly a week. We never really know until we start editing.
But the big plus is that you get extended cuts of every episode. And usually that's going to mean a whole extra segment that's about maybe a geekier topic or something that's a little more personal to us or something that's just going to really appeal to the hardcore Audio Unleashed listener.
Yeah, what it boils down to is if you're somebody who would support Audio Unleashed on Patreon, we're going to make sure the bonuses to every episode are really aimed straight at your interests.
Yeah, and so if you want to hear these segments, you can subscribe to our Patreon for $3 a month, which is less than I spend every single day on my cup of coffee when I go to Starbucks to write my boring articles.
Yeah. One more time with that URL, that's patreon.com/Audio Unleashed.
Or Audio
Unleashed. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.